Hello and welcome to a clash of two giants, well at least of the Nigerian smartphone market. On one side you have the Tecno Phantom X and on the other side you have the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So if you're ready for this clash, I'm ready. Let's get on with it. Tecno Mobile and Xiaomi are two giants of the smartphone market, especially in the mid-range segment. Tecno are giants of the African market, especially Nigeria. They've been here for over a decade. And on the other hand, you have Xiaomi, who are world giants but are only just getting into Africa for the time being. So we're going to take a close look at two of some of their best mid-range offerings and see which one is best. We're going to look at several factors including body, performance, battery, price, etc. So, well, let the comparison begin. Kick off, we're going to start with the body. Now, both phones look beautiful. They look really nice. They look glassy too and glossy. Well, we'll start with the Tecno. The Tecno Phantom X has a plastic frame, Gorilla Glass protection at the front. It does not have any Gorilla Glass protection at the back. It weighs 201 grams and has no IP53 rating. The Redmi Note 10 Pro also has a plastic frame, Gorilla Glass both at the front and back, weighs 193 grams and has an IP53 rating. Both phones share similar specs, but when you look a bit closer, you see that the Tecno Phantom X has a glass back, so if it falls, the insurance that a Gorilla Glass 5 will give you is not there, and we have seen the Tecno Phantom X fall with some very ugly looking cracks. Also, it lacks an IP53 rating for dust and water splash protection, which the Redmi Note 10 Pro has. As a result, the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the better body for me because it has Gorilla Glass 5 at the back and it has IP53 rating for when splashing or dust gets on the phone. Our next port of call is performance. Now, performance for a phone is very important. How the phone is going to act, how the phone is going to play around with apps. Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be able to run certain apps? Well, the performance of a phone is determined by the SoC, the GPU, its software, and the memory, and we can quantify a smartphone's performance by what we call benchmarks. The Tecno Phantom X uses a very powerful MediaTek Helio G95 SoC with a Mali G76 GPU, which is very powerful combo. There's an LPDDR4X RAM on board, an eMMC 5.1 memory, and there is space for an SD card slot. The MediaTek Helio G95 is one of the very powerful mid-range SoCs on the market today. The Redmi Note 10 Pro, on the other hand, uses a Snapdragon 732G with an Adreno 618 GPU. It also has the same LPDDR4X RAM, a faster UFS 2.2, and there is space for an SD card slot. Now, both phones run their respective user interfaces, with Tecno being the Tecno iOS and the Xiaomi being the MIUI on top of Android 11. If we were to put the specs from both phones together, you would see that the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the higher Antutu score, which is 336,000 to the 320,000 of the Tecno Phantom X. And if you go down and look at the specs, people who know about smartphone processors know very well that despite the fact that the Helio G76 is the more powerful GPU, developers code games exclusively for the Adreno GPU, which means that games and graphics will handle better on the Snapdragon 732G. You can also check the memory and you can see that the Tecno Phantom X is using the slower and older eMMC, whilst the Redmi Note 10 is using the faster UFS 2.2. And generally everybody knows that MIUI does have its flaws, but it is far better than what iOS can offer. So in terms of performance, I'd give it to the Redmi Note 10 Pro. With photography being the new battleground that smartphone makers have taken to, it is great to see that both phones came loaded in this department. The Tecno Phantom X comes with a triple camera setup, of which the main shooter is a Samsung GN1. Very impressive from Tecno. The other two cameras include a 13 megapixel telephoto and an 8MP ultra wide, both of which are generic, meaning that we don't know who the makers are. They could be anyone, we just don't know. On the Xiaomi side, you can also see that Xiaomi has a quad camera setup with a 108 Samsung HM2, which is flagship quality. There's also an 8MP ultra wide, the Sony IMX camera, a 5 megapixel Omnivision macro, and a 2 megapixel Galaxy core depth. Tecno Phantom X pushes the bar when it comes to selfies with a dual 48 plus 8 megapixel selfie camera, whilst the Redmi Note 10 stays very decent, modest actually. So if we were to put all of this together on paper and with the spec sheet, the Samsung GN1 on the Tecno Mobile is actually the better sensor. It is actually the better sensor. Although you could look at the other two, the ultra wide and the 13MP telephoto, as just add-ons, which most companies do these days, but the camera on the Tecno Phantom X is supposed to be a world beater, but it isn't. It is hamstrung by poor image processing from the Helio G95, as well as Tecno's own poor camera software, and that is where Xiaomi excels in. I mean, MIUI's camera software isn't the best, but it is pretty good, and with the kind of world-class image ISPs that are present on the Snapdragon 732 to process images, it is a no-brainer here. The Redmi Note 10 Pro will produce much better photos, eye-catching photos, despite the fact that it has a slightly inferior camera sensor. Now that will take us to the displays. Now the displays are very important. Whenever you pick up a phone and you bring it to life, you are always faced with a display. Everything you do on a smartphone these days is done on the display. Now both phones have impressive displays, because if we look at the Tecno Phantom S, you'll see that it has a Super AMOLED display with full high definition. It's a 6.7 inch size screen, and the pixel density is an very decent 385 ppi. Brightness is 450 nits, and you also have a refresh rate there of 90 Hz and a touch rate of 180 Hz with Gorilla Glass 5 protection. The specs are also similar on the sides of the Redmi Note 10 Pro, because the Redmi Note 10 Pro actually has a slightly smaller screen with 6.67 inches, Super AMOLED as well, full high definition resolution. You also have a higher PPI, which is at 395 PPI, and a whopping 1200 nits of brightness, a faster refresh rate of 120 Hz and a touch rate of 240 Hz, Gorilla Glass 5 protection, HDR10 support, and Widevine level 1. You see that despite the fact that both have similar screens, when it comes to how much clarity that you can get on your screen, the Redmi Note 10 edges it. And then also it also has the faster refresh rate at 120, which is more than what you can find on the Tecno Phantom X. And then HDR10, imagine watching your movies in pure high definition. HDR10, Redmi Note 10 Pro has the better display. This is also despite the fact that there is a waterfall curved screen on the Tecno Phantom X. That's just for aesthetics. It doesn't really affect how you're going to view stuff that appears on your screen. And oh yes, one of the very important parts of a phone is the part that we're all worried about. We're always worried about it. We always have our chargers up and down, the batteries. Now both phones have huge batteries. The Tecno Phantom X has a 4700 milliamp hour battery with 33 watts of fast charge. The Redmi Note 10 Pro also has 33 watts of fast charge, but it has the bigger battery at 5000 milliamp hours. Straight up shot here, people, straight up. Let's move over to audio and sensors. Now the Tecno Phantom X comes with a very loud speaker, a single firing loudspeaker, and a headphone jack. You can also find fingerprint scanner, which is under the display, proximity sensor at the top of the screen, which blacks out the screen if you want to make calls. There's also a light and ambient sensor, an accelerometer, a gyroscope, and a compass. If you switch over to the Redmi Note 10 Pro, Redmi Note 10 Pro has a stereo loudspeaker, which means it has two speakers, one at the top and one at the bottom, with a 3.5mm jack. There is also a fingerprint scanner at the side, proximity sensor, light and ambient sensors, accelerometer, a gyroscope, and a compass. Now, this is where the Redmi Note 10 Pro takes it ahead. It has an IRO blaster, which you can use as a universal remote control for, think of any appliance you can use it on. Any appliance that uses a remote control, your phone can do it. The Tecno Phantom S lacks this feature. There's also NFC near field communication for payments and other sorts of phone-to-phone communication. The Tecno Phantom X also doesn't have it. So in terms of audio and sensors, full marks go to the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And this is where we're going to rock up with connectivity. Of course, one of the primary reasons for buying a phone is connectivity. You need to be connected to your friends, to your family, to the internet, and both phones are well equipped in this department. The Tecno Phantom X has, or rather it supports all international network bands from band 1 to band 41. I think the ones for Nigeria, you have band 3 for Glo, band 20 for MTN, and so on and so forth, but you do not have to worry about network connectivity with this phone. The network modem on the Tecno Phantom S is a category 12, which has uplink speeds of 150 megabits per second and downlink speeds of 600 megabits per second. When you talk about uplink speed, that is the speed at which you can be able to upload documents or files from your phone to the internet. The downlink speed is simply the download speeds. So you have 150 megabits per second for uplink and 600 megabits per second for downlink. The Tecno Phantom X also supports dual SIM slots, and it supports Bluetooth 5.0, Wi-Fi 5.0, and USB 2.0. On the other side, which is the Redmi Note 10 Pro now, it also supports the same all international bands, the same ones that the Tecno Phantom X supports, but it has a much better network modem, a category 15 modem, a Snapdragon X15 modem, which is a category 15. So how does a category 12 modem differ from a category 15? Now they have the same uplink speeds, which is 150 megabits per second, but the downlink speed of the Redmi Note 10 Pro is actually 800 megabits per second, which is way faster than the one on the Tecno Phantom X, which means if you were to put a Tecno Phantom X and a Redmi Note 10 Pro on the table and try to download something using the same network with the same internet service provider, the Redmi Note 10 Pro is going to download way faster than the Tecno Phantom X because it has a much
better network modem. You could also move on, and then you can see that the Redmi Note 10 Pro also supports dual SIM slots, and it supports Bluetooth 5.2, Wi-Fi 6, and USB 2.0. Straight up, you can see the specs are very clear that the Redmi Note 10 Pro is better in terms of connectivity. So yes, let's get to the final part, the most important part, and that is prices. Now, the Tecno Phantom X has only one price variant, which is 8 gigs of RAM, LPDDR4X RAM, as I said earlier, and 256 gigs storage, and it is sold for a whopping 228,000 naira official price. If you convert that to US dollars, it's 554 US dollars. And on the other side, despite having much better specs, totally much better specs, a better camera performance, better SoC performance, I am saying that the Redmi Note 10 Pro costs 126,000 naira for the 128 gig variant, which is around 300 US dollars, and then for the 8 gig RAM and 128 gig variant, it's 135,000 naira, which is 330 US dollars. By itself, the Tecno Phantom X is not a bad phone. It is not a bad phone. It can compete with any mid-ranger in the market today. Just think of any mid-ranger, pick it up and put it up against the Tecno Phantom X. It's going to do very well against them. It has a great SoC, it has great displays, it has beautiful cameras, but the pricing is off. I mean, for a phone that is not as feature-rich or spec-wise as the Redmi Note 10 Pro, it costs $200 more. I don't know how the people at Tecno HQ are going to explain this, but it absolutely makes no sense. And I think every reviewer that I have seen review this phone has been complaining about the steep price. So if you are going to get a phone and you had between these two phones as your choices, it is a no-brainer that you should go with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. It is that simple. It is an absolute no-brainer, because this phone, in terms of everything, it is better, even though some of them are by slight margins, but it is way better than the Tecno Phantom X, and you will be doing yourself a great disservice if you do not get a phone this good for this cheaper price. So that's it. In the end, the choice is yours anyway. Whatever one you choose, it's your money and it's your choice, and nobody has any right to tell you how to spend your money on which phone or how not to. Well, my name is Jeffrey, and we've come to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want me to do more videos like this in future where we bring out all the specs, because I think by the time we've gone far in this channel, I want all of us to know how to be able to tell two phones apart by just looking at the specs. So if you want to see more stuff like this, please, you know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe. I'm going to leave a lot of links down in the comments so that we can be able to further read for those people who are interested in reading actually, and gain further knowledge if need be. But that's it. I'll be signing out right now. See ya.